that nice crack. That nice crack of a Celt at 5:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is just an episode about what kind of media I'm consuming right now, talking about stuff that I find generally interesting. It's kind of a casual Tuesday episode. I just finished the podcast of Lex Fridman and Matthew McConaughey. And the second Lex Fridman posted this episode a couple hours ago, I decided I had to listen to it because I really like Lex Fridman as a host. He's unlikely to me because he's this dignified, thoughtful, deep Russian guy. And he's very, I feel like he has all these themes. He has very broad questions like, what's the meaning of life? That's literally the last question he asked Matthew McConaughey in this interview. He asks questions like, what's the meaning of life? Or what is love? And just really deep questions. And so I definitely thought this was going to be an interesting episode, and it was, because the two of them, you've got Matthew McConaughey, who's like the cowboy. He's such a Texan. And then you have Lex Fridman, this like Russian deep thinker guy. The two of them seem very unlikely, which makes for perfect conversation. It kind of reminded me actually of how that same sentiment goes for when Theo Von and Malcolm Gladwell on a couple weeks ago. Because the two of them, like Theo Von's this crazy comedian from the South, and then Malcolm Gladwell is this thought leader type. Just unlikely pairs having conversations I'm all about. I felt this way about the one that was with Kanye West. What was this chick's name? I can't remember her name, but she was on interviewing Grimes. And she was the one from Uncut Gems. I can't remember this. Julia Fox. So Julia Fox and Grimes, same concept of two really, really, really opposite people having a conversation I will listen to all day long. So this was no exception, the Lex Fridman podcast with Matthew McConaughey. So anyway, so I just finished that, and I was actually cleaning my apartment while I was listening, and I was realizing as I was listening to this podcast how when I have voices on a podcast or an audiobook on, it helps me do mundane tasks and makes me feel less alone. And that brings me to this idea that ever since I've moved to Texas, which was 6 months ago, I definitely have been kind of lonely. Like I mentioned this in a couple episodes ago, where I'm still getting my bearings, even though I moved here half a year ago, of like who my friend group is, or like who can I just call up and hang with at any given moment. And I don't really have that 100% yet. Like I have some friends for sure, but I don't have like a crew the way that I did in New York. And that had like layers and layers and layers of friends from every different iteration of me in New York City, from my model days, from my yoga days, from my, getting into running, my work friends. I had so many friends, and I don't really have that here. So I'm still kind of finding that. And so when I listen to Lex Fridman and Matthew McConaughey, it almost feels like I'm listening to a couple of friends, and a couple of cool friends talking about cool stuff like AI and love. And I like that they're both in Texas, Matthew McConaughey and Lex Fridman, like in Austin here where I am, because it makes me almost feel like I'm part of this club, this like the Austin scene. And there are a lot of podcasters and creators and people who are doing big things that live here in Austin. That's part of the appeal of why I even came here, even though I didn't really know that many people. So I gave that a listen while I was organizing, and I got a lot out of it. I thought it was really thought-provoking. And then I was thinking of another form of media that I've consumed lately, and this is very controversial, but there's a show on HBO called The Idol, and it's brought to you by the same guy who made Euphoria. I think his name's Dan Levinson. And so Euphoria was a controversial show about high school kids doing drugs and being crazy. This show is kind of like, it's about a singer, a pop star who's having a mental breakdown, or she had a mental breakdown after her mother died. and she's just kind of like still going through the motions of being a pop star, but she's getting entangled with this guy who's played by The Weeknd, who is also the Weeknd himself is heavily involved in the show's creation. And there was a lot to be said about the controversy surrounding this show because there were lots of rewrites, and I think one of the directors that was working on it for a while like dropped out because she didn't like where it was going. It's like there's been said to have some like toxic work culture or on set. This has all allegedly been reported by like the New York or the Rolling Stone put an article about this, and I had heard that it was like controversial. I also heard that it was terrible. I was watching a bunch of YouTube reactions saying that this show was just so bad. So I really wanted to watch it, and I like it. I'm the only person I feel like who's actually like openly saying that they really like it. But that's because I feel like it's okay for there to be plots that you don't believe in. Like I don't, just because this like damsel in distress that's our protagonist in the show isn't like being the strong woman that I think people want the narrative to be. I kind of think that it's okay for a story to be told, even if it's not like a narrative that like our society needs. It's more just like visually. So I feel like it's kind of like, it feels like what it's probably like to be one of these pop stars. And the other big thing that kind of like adds to it for me is I'm really big into aesthetics of shows, of like how a show feels and looks. And this show nails that. Like it's very interesting. And you're in these different scenes and you almost feel like you're looking at an editorial in a fashion magazine of some kind of a fantasy situation. And visually it's very stunning. So that's why I like it. And I also just like Lily Rose Depp. I think she's an amazing actress. So even though the storyline and like the writing might not be amazing, it's fun to watch Lily Rose Depp play this character. And I'm not a huge fan of The Weeknd's acting. Like I don't think he's the best, but I do think he kind of does embody this like weird dude with a rat tail that you're just like, who are you and why are you with this girl? Like what are you doing? So I kind of like it. So that's my take on The Idol on HBO. And then as far as it's funny, like when people ask me like what am I reading and stuff, like so sometimes I'm reading books, or like I've listened to a lot of audiobooks recently, but I've kind of fallen off that this past week, and instead I've been doom scrolling on social media. And I hate to admit this, but I've just been like really like obsessed with Instagram, and I've been on Instagram way too much. And I have the tab pulled up right now, and I was scrolling through thinking like, why do I waste so much time scrolling through what other people are up to and what actually gets me excited? Because so often, like I'll just tell you what I see right now. I see this girl that I know in New York showing her ice bath party situation. That's cool, but like, you know, how is this adding to my life? I see a guy talking about his chest hair. I see some race reports of people who just ran a race over the weekend, which is good for them. And I don't like, I just feel like sometimes I'm just wasting my time spinning my wheels. And the only reason I'm saying this is that maybe you can relate, because it's like, it's not adding value to my life. So I don't know why I'm doing it. So I'm like kind of holding a mirror up to myself right now. Just why? But I will say that today is June 13th, which is a special day. Any 13th of the month means something to me. And that's because my sober birthday is March 13th. So that means I'm 15 months sober today. And yeah, cool. I love keeping track of the months, like days and months, but months is easier to like, the 13th of every month, I just like add on another month. That's 15 months back from relapse, because before that, right before I had 3 years sober, I relapsed in March, but cumulatively I have over 4 years. So like besides this little window of when I relapsed, 4 years total, like without those relapses counted, is pretty cool. And I like thinking about how I'm 34. And so like I've spent the 99.9% of my 30s sober. Yeah, it's not easy, but it is something that I like to keep track of and like celebrate when there's little milestones, because I always think about how that's like the glue that kind of keeps me in check of like, well, at the very, very least, if I don't feel amazing about training, if I don't feel amazing about whatever, I have my sobriety. And that's kind of like something that I feel not proud of, but it makes me just go, yeah, okay, things are never bad enough that I don't have that. And I always want to remind myself of that. Actually, I had the craziest dream last night actually about one of my old sponsors. I had this dream about her that I was talking to her. And that kind of represents to me that I've been doing this sober thing lately kind of on my own. Like I'm in and out of meetings. I haven't been tethered to like the 12-step program the way that I sometimes am. And that has a lot to do with like being in a new city and still like getting my lay of the land. And I find so much value in having community with the sobriety, like going to meetings and being part of a program, because there's a lot of accountability for that. And so I do think it's better, but I also think like for me right now, I still am thinking about one day at a time, doing it right now, not getting ahead of myself, staying just like tethered to like my go-to things. And actually one thing I want to say is that like I've been really having this, it's been really great. So I was a really big red wine drinker, and I've been getting tart cherry juice and pure cranberry juice, which is actually very, very tart itself. And I'll mix a little into seltzer or just drink it plain, like almost as if it's a glass of wine. I poured some of it into a wine glass the other night with my boyfriend, and it felt like I was drinking a glass of wine. And I even said to him, I'm like, doesn't this like look and feel and even kind of smell like a glass of wine? And that to me was kind of cool, because I was like, it kind of felt like this same effect of like this symbolic thing of like, the day has happened. Now I'm relaxing, drinking my little red drink. And while there's no alcohol in it whatsoever, it kind of like felt like that symbolic gesture that I like craved so much with wine when I was drinking. So yeah, so that's been kind of a fun little like thing, little ritual that I've been doing. I have some tart cherry in my fridge and I'm going to drink after my next workout today. But yeah, so that's where I am right now. That was my little media diet update for the week, little sobriety update. Thanks for tuning in. And if you want to find me on Instagram, we can chat. I like to connect with as many people as I can who have found me here. I'm at Lucy Beatrix, LucieBeatrix. And until next time, just be fast. Just win.